Hey guys, it's the Pink King here, and today I wanted to talk about Invincible.
Wow, man. I'm still working on my one-liners, but that one is really bad.
No, not that Invincible, but rather this Invincible. Anyone who knows Invincible knows these comics, created by Robert Kirkman, the man behind The Walking Dead. Invincible was his take on the superhero genre, as he was a huge fan of it, as it would follow the life of a kid named Mark who would eventually become invincible. So, while I wait for season 2 of the show to end, I feel like we should take a little step back and look at what preceded the show with the comics, and have a look at one thing I feel helped this series stand out from others, especially other gory and violent comics out there. One fatal thing that helps Invincible stand on its own, and what will hopefully be implemented more of in the show as it goes on. That being how Invincible handles pain. Now, what do I mean by pain, and why Invincible specifically? Why not something like The Boys or even Marvel or DC? Well, that's because Invincible is very smart with how it presents pain, and how it gets us as an audience to react to that pain. With that being one genius factor of Robert Kirkman, as just like with The Walking Dead, pain is such a huge theme, and tool used to help us understand their world and their characters, through not only physical pain, but emotional pain. Now, to me, I feel pain is one of the most powerful ways to get an audience engaged, because no matter who you are or what you've done, we all have experienced pain, because it is something unavoidable. No matter how cautious you are or how careful you are, pain will always find a way to seep into your life. And most of the time, it comes from places you least expect. One moment in both the show and the comics was this moment: Nolan beating his son Mark to near death. We feel every punch, every word being said. We feel the helplessness of Mark, the fear from the people of Earth, and in the very end, we feel the regret from Nolan. Despite what's going on, and it's not the violence and pain being inflicted that hurts the most, it's the complete betrayal from this moment. And that's how Invincible uses pain so well, it gives context. If you were to just watch this moment without having seen all the events that have led up to this, you would just assume it's another violent comic for the sake of grabbing people's attention and for being a cool comic, quote unquote. When in reality, it's that context that matters. Because despite the impossible and far-fetched approach to the violence, it feels believable because the context for it is something so human. The idea of a father betraying his son. Now, in some way, we as people can relate to that, whether it be having someone close to you turn their back on you, not having a father figure in your life, or being alone and abandoned by the ones you love. And what really makes this hurt more is the build-up to get to this moment. The times we've seen Nolan being a caring father, a man who's willing to do whatever it takes for his son, to a literal Superman in his life. But to go from that to this, where that person feels long gone, leaving only questions and hurt, making you question whether it truly existed in the first place, only for it all to end up hurting most. Because after all the betrayal, all the violence, and all the atrocities, Nolan can't do it. He can't kill his own son. He can't conquer the planet Mark calls home. And that forces in the most painful realization of all. That Mark was right. Mark took all this pain, all this suffering, in the hope that Earth had changed his father. And in the end, all of the pain, all of the torment, all of the tragedies, all of the death, were all for nothing. Because Mark was right. And Mark, still there, left bloodied and alone, is abandoned by the one true thing he had to someone who could understand what he was going through. Hitting hard to the reader that all this never needed to happen, and yet Mark still doesn't know that. Again, it feels so real. It hits so hard because the pain comes from a very genuine and real place. It's the thing that makes boxing movies so great. It's not the fights themselves, but rather the stories behind them. We don't cheer for Rocky because he fought Creed. We cheer for him because we see a poor, unfortunate man, a nobody, go out to prove he's more than a bum, to prove he can be more and do more than what people believe he can. We don't cheer for Adonis Creed because he is the son of Apollo. We cheer for him because we see an abandoned boy try to prove to the world he wasn't a mistake. That he isn't a stain on his father's legacy, but rather he can reach and go beyond his father's legacy. And even in real life, like with Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou, we don't cheer for Francis because he was a former champion, we cheer for him because he's a man who had to grow up in the hardest of ways. A man who only had a dream to fuel him, when he had no home, no friends, and no clear direction. We see a man who has gone through hell and back plenty of times, finally get his big break, finally get a shot at his dream. And so when he dropped Fury, it was just like when Rocky dropped Apollo. It was the underdog proving everyone wrong and proving he is more than what they say he was. All come from such an honest and human place. That's why we care, for when they get hit, or when they bleed, or when they almost die. It's because we understand exactly what the stakes are, not only on a superficial level, like in the world's in danger, but on a much more personal level, such as someone losing a friend, and being betrayed by the ones closest to you. It's not just the gory visuals and cool fighting alongside swearing, it's much deeper than that. It's possibly the scars you don't see that are the ones that hurt the most, the wounds that are invisible, the ones that don't heal. It's all the ones that stay with us for as long as we live, and there's nothing we can do about that. We can't pause the process, we can't stop time to heal, we have to just try and take it, and keep rolling with the punches. And that's a sentiment all throughout the comics, and is one reason why I love them. Like with the Mark and Conquest fight, it happens directly after the Invincible Wars, where the world has already been brutalized and damaged, where people have died and civilization as a whole is terrified. And yet despite that, they're not allowed to stop, and mourn as Conquest arrives, to engage in possibly one of the most hard to watch fights in the entire series, as it just feels completely helpless. Or later on, after the death of Nolan and Thrag, Mark has just lost his father once again, only this time it's permanent. And despite having no skin, no father, he must assume command of the Viltrum Empire. A burden his father once carried, and now he must shoulder as well. And despite that, he has to almost immediately go into another war, fighting Robot, a former friend turned enemy, to save once again the planet he's called home for so long. And this brings me to one of the most important elements of the pain in this series. The ultimate point about this pain that was absolutely crucial for ensuring that it always works, and that was the healing. The series has a lot of pain, but it balances out with moments of healing and moments of happiness. Despite Mark losing his dad, he gained an empire, where he could make real change to the world, where he could create the world he wanted his family and especially his kids to live in. Mark and everyone in the series suffer from pain, but within that suffering is joy, especially the joys of life, that remind us why we go through that pain in the first place, or in the case of stuff like Rocky, what we fight for. We go through those moments of pain and torment so we can look in the crowd and find our Adrian, so we can create a better future for our kids. So in a way, we can all truly be invincible. I've been the Pink King, and I will see you all next time.